How's everybody doing today? How's everybody doing today? Good? Good? I don't think this man needs an introduction, but I do think we need to say some important things about Chris Paul before we get going. And number one, 12-time All-Star, Olympic gold medalist, one of the 75 greatest players in NBA history. But more importantly, Chris Paul is called the point guard for a reason. Because on the court, he is like a coach, but he is also like a CEO. And that's also the way he approaches everything else he does off the court too. Because he is a CEO in philanthropy, in his businesses, in his family, everything that he does, he runs that way. So he truly is a point guard's point guard, a point guard. So Chris, thanks for being here today.
Appreciate it, Kevin. I'm gonna start taking you everywhere with me. Sheesh.
I just want to right off the bat though, I want to talk about all the philanthropic things you're doing. But I think the best story, in case anybody has missed it, is your 61 Foundation and why it came about, and tell the story about it, because I don't think there is ever a dry eye in the house when you see that story on television.
So when I was a senior in high school, my grandfather, I'm born and raised in North Carolina, so I'm East Coast. Yeah. East Coast, which has a lot to do with my connection to HBCUs, but my grandfather had the first Black-owned service station in North Carolina. So as a kid, I grew up changing tires, checking oil, and all this stuff, pumping gas, and just at my granddad's service station. And my senior year, my grandfather got murdered by 5 teenagers. And I lost my grandmother when I was 8 to lung cancer, so my granddad became my best friend, right? My granddad was everything. And as a kid, I wanted Jordans and shoes and stuff like that, like anybody, but my granddad would make me come to the service station. Even though my granddad used to have a wad of money in his front pocket, fat knot in his front pocket, he wouldn't give me the money. He made me work for it. And so I signed my letter of intent to go to Wake Forest on November 14, 2002, and the very next day is when I found out my granddad had been murdered. And so November 19th, that's crazy, 2002, it means I'm getting old.
You know,
November 19th was his funeral, and the next day was the first game of my senior year, and I scored 61 points in that game for my late grandfather.
And for anyone who's never seen the video, after you scored that 61st point, what'd you do?
So I had 59. I drove to the lane, and I scored on a floater and got fouled. And so that gave me 61, and so now I'm going to the free throw line to get 62. The state record was 67, held by the GOAT, Michael Jordan, right? But that wasn't important to me, so I went to the line and I threw the ball out of bounds and walked off the court because it was all about 61 on that day.
Yeah, no.
And so with my foundation, we have a Club 61 program, so everyone wants to have this Kobe Bryant career where you play with one team. That has not been my story. Right? I played for a number of teams now, but what I've had an opportunity to do is every summer here in LA, I bring 5 kids from the cities that I've played in, right? New Orleans, Houston, y'all probably could help me. Phoenix,
San Francisco.
You know what I mean? All these different cities, and I bring them out here to LA for 3 days, and we go through life skills. You know, we go through financial literacy, we go through social justice. We go through all these different things, just teaching them all these things that I feel like my granddad tried to teach me with the knowledge that he had at that age. But being in the NBA, going in my 20th season, I feel like I've learned from so many people, and so I'm just trying to spread that knowledge with these kids as much as possible.
Before I'm going to get to HBCUs in a second, because everyone in my family is a product of an HBCU, and I think it's an important thing to discuss. But I also want to talk about your time as the head of the Players Association, building the NBA Players Association into one of the most powerful organizations in all of professional sports. And you had to go toe-to-toe sometimes at the table with some of those owners and some of the administrative executives. How was that for you?
Man, it was a business class on steroids.
Yeah.
Seriously, because when you're in the y'all hoop, I mean, some of y'all adults probably.
Everybody in here
everybody
hoops
hoop.
at some. Everybody hoop at different levels.
So
different levels to the game.
It is, you're right. It's definitely different levels.
Yeah.
You got to tell people that, because sometimes I'll be out in public and people be like, man, you should come hoop with me sometime. Like, no.
Right?
But what I say about it is when I was a kid in the backyard playing just like anybody, doing fadeaways, acting like Michael Jordan and all this stuff, I never thought about 401k, right? I never thought about taxes. I didn't think about that. I just knew I wanted to play in the NBA. So as a 19-year-old kid, I get drafted to the NBA and I fall into all of this money. I have no financial literacy or anything like that. You know what I mean? So my third year in the NBA, I joined the executive committee. And I'll never forget it. When you used to play in the NBA, we'd have these meetings and they would come in and they would ask us, they'd be like, who's going to be the guys that's, so every team has two people that represent the team. You have a alternate and the actual person. And so guys used to be like, nah, we ain't doing that. The vets used to be like, Rook, you got to do it. Because guys just didn't really care about the business, right? So my third year in the league, I remember being in those CBA negotiations, sitting across from all the owners. And it was pretty intimidating. I mean, I was 22 at the time, sitting across, not really knowing, but I would give my little 2 cents from my experiences. Fast forward a few years later, I become the president, right, of the players. And because I had been through so much stuff and learned so much, it gave me the confidence to go into those CBA negotiations with the team, right? I had James Jones, had a number of players that was representative of our whole league, not just all max players, right? When I became the president, we got Steph Curry on the board. We had LeBron at one point, but we also had mid-level guys. We had league minimum guys because you need everybody's perspective. And I think it was just kept teaching me about leadership, about how you got to get people to buy in, because we have 450 players in the NBA, but the most recognizable players in the world, right? Because we don't wear helmets or masks. Seriously, that's why everyone knows us when you go out to places. But it was definitely a journey and an experience.
And well done by you, because you changed the face of the league. And I don't know if they might have penalized you because of that. I'm not going to go into that, though. But anyway, real basketball fans know what I just said. I want to talk, though, about your investment and your involvement with HBCUs, because when I grew up, and I know for my parents, it was the only alternative. And now it has become, it's come back around. And with the investment from the Biden-Harris administration of $7 billion in HBCUs, it's a really big deal. What spurred you to want to be involved with HBCUs?
Man, it's crazy because when you're a kid, you don't really travel, right? My experience wasn't that. I traveled playing AAU basketball, but for a lot of my homies and stuff that I grew up with, that I'm still in group chats with, I'm from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, right? A lot of my homies, for them going out of town is going to Charlotte. Seriously, but that's life. That's what it is. And so for me, growing up in Winston-Salem, and this is the craziest thing, there was Wake Forest University there, and there was Winston-Salem State University there, both in Winston-Salem, right? As a kid, you don't know one is a PWI and one is a HBCU. I just knew that on Saturdays, my family went to Winston-Salem State football games, right? Yeah. And there was a lot of people there who looked like me, right? And I knew Wake Forest was sort of down the street, but it was a bunch of trees. You couldn't see campus, right? You get older, all this stuff starts to make a little bit more sense, right? But I also realized when I was becoming this high school phenom when it came to basketball, Winston-Salem State didn't even recruit me, right? And it's not like that Winston-Salem State was dumb about it. It was just they probably realized they didn't have a chance, right? Because growing up, you knew you had to go to one of those blue bloods or whatnot to make it to the NBA. So it was the Dukes, it was the Carolinas, it was all of this different type stuff. And so there was a time where I was in the NBA and I just wanted to learn more information, right? Because like I said, as a kid, you don't understand how much it costs to go to school. Right? When I got a scholarship to go to Wake Forest, I thought I just went for free. Seriously, because I don't even know if y'all know, like somebody actually pays that money for you to go. I just thought I was going for free, right? And then I met the Dew family who was actually sponsoring, paying for me to go to school. And all of this is education, right? And so as I started to learn more about HBCUs and why they are so important, I learned that my mom had went to Winston-Salem State and my dad had went, but they had me and my brother, so they had dropped out of school. Right? And so like you said, like these HBCUs are so important. They're so important because there are some of these other schools that you can't even get into. And so I just wanted to continue to champion these HBCUs, and in the process of it, I learned about so many of them, right? Because in my backyard, I had Winston-Salem State, Some of my family went to A&T. I know North Carolina Central. A lot of people know the Hamptons, the Howards, the FAMUs, but then you don't necessarily know the Bluefield State.
Talladega.
Oh yeah, you can go on and on. And so for me, it became education. And I'm still learning more and more, and that's what I'm grateful for about the HBCUs.
And you also have classes that you're sponsoring at Southern, at Winston-Salem. Is it Southern, Grambling, and
A&T. So what I did after one of my MBA seasons, I got an opportunity to go to this really cool class at Harvard with Anita Elbers, right? And it was about sports and entertainment. And it was at Harvard. Like, I was staying in a dorm room, right, and everything. And I was going to this class, and I was like, it's called the BIMS program. Yep. And I was like, man, this class is so dope. You start to learn and realize that some of these schools don't have the finance to have some of these classes. So I talked to the teacher, to the professor. We partnered together and started putting these classes at HBCUs.
I also want to talk about your family foundation and the way that you land in different communities, because you've been to a few, but you do find a way to really entrench yourself. And whether it's here in LA, whether it's in Phoenix or New Orleans or San Francisco, you have always found a way to do that, both you and your wife. So explain to folks your approach to giving back.
I just have a really, really strong attachment to kids, right? Even though I just turned 39 the other day, right? I still look at myself as a big kid. And so when I was coming here today, I got a chance to see a lot of the students or whatnot, and I was coming in here, and you know, like when you're joking around and people always like, grow up, and I always say, don't. Right. Don't, you know, and when I saw all the kids coming in here, I just always get goosebumps because you guys don't realize how much you guys have ahead of you. And I think what changed that perspective for me too is that I have kids of my own. I got a 14-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter. Right, and I'm constantly talking to them about life, trying to teach them about the tools and the things that they need to succeed, because they live a totally different life than me and my wife did as kids growing up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And so through our foundation, we're just always trying to help in any way that we can. Sometimes that's monetarily, sometimes that's showing up, because the thing that I've learned most, right, like being a parent, I'm going to my 20th season in the NBA, and I love what I do. But the biggest thing is that I miss so much time, and I realize how grateful, or at least I hope they are. I hope my kids are grateful when I get a chance to show up, right? Like, money matters. Don't get it twisted. You know, people need those dollars and cents. But when I got a chance before the election to go back to Winston-Salem State and walk with those kids and be with them, they just want to know, you know, that you're accessible. You know, they just want to be able to talk to you and give you their stories and relate a little bit. So through my foundation, we just try to continue to do that.
One of the things I love about the foundation is you pick several different charities and groups to give money to. How can people get involved if they want to get involved with you and the foundation?
Well, you can go to our Chris Paul Family Foundation. We're just going to do that right now, huh?
Yeah.
So, hey,
Let's go.
Get involved, you know. But we also just we're always around. Carmen Wilson is back here in the back, who is my right hand. She don't ever say nothing about herself, but it's funny, like, I've been able to have this career and have the foundation and have these things and be the president of the union, and I still got to play basketball. I still got to play basketball. I got to manage my teammates. I got to manage life. I got to be dad, husband, all this different type stuff, and I'm sure everybody in here knows what that feels like. So, yeah, Carmen, like, I have an amazing team around me that helps me do all the things that we try to do.
And by the way, this goes from large donations to something as simple as prom dresses that your wife does. And when you see the faces of these young women getting a prom dress, you didn't even expect to go to prom because you couldn't attend, and all of a sudden then a rack of designer dresses rolls in. And that moment it's special.
Because I have a son and a daughter, right? I'm one of two boys, but I have a son and a daughter. That daughter is going to be the end of me. But it changes you. It really changes you, because I was all boy, and now my daughter is 11 years old and is the best thing that ever happened in my life. But that's why my wife has been so special, because there are things that I know about basketball, about football, about just being a boy, right? But my wife, she understood the importance of girls and young ladies and how big the prom is. So my wife does a prom dress drive every year that is really, really cool because she actually brings dresses in for girls to choose from, right? They get theirs, makeup artists, their shoes. She had Steve Madden one year help with it and everything like that. And to see these ladies, the way that they glow, because we all know that confidence is a real thing. And when you can instill that into young people at an early age, I think it'll carry on with them for the rest of their lives.
I also want to mention that, 20 seasons in the NBA, and that is playing at the highest level. And as you said, it's just 455 jobs. And somebody's coming for that job each and every year.
Every
a young
year.
dude, right, who thinks he's going to get your job.
Probably one of them.
Somebody who raised their hand and said, I'm playing ball.
Exactly.
Yeah. But also, you have been a part of the community for those 20 years. How does that go back to your grandfather, go to your parents who are always with you, and the rest of your family? Your family members are always with you too.
Yeah, I always tell people, my crew, we roll deep. We roll deep.
That's real.
That's my
real.
brother, his wife, and his kids, my aunts, uncles. I'm from the South, so it's a gang of us when we show up. We didn't make the playoffs. That's no secret, i.e. why I'm here. But it was the first time I had made the playoffs in 14 years, right? And I was highly upset, seriously. But what it did was it gave me the opportunity to actually be dad a little earlier, right? I live in San Francisco. My wife and kids stay here in LA. And I'll tell you this, the most fulfilling thing that I had an opportunity to do at the union was set up insurance for retired players. I was in a gym this past weekend. My son plays AAU, so I'm an AAU dad now on the weekends. I'm in the gym all day.
Right.
All day. It was a lot different when I was a kid. It's a long day now as a parent.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And then especially when you got to drive home after.
Come on. And you're tired. You're tired.
I was exhausted.
Right.
And I was sitting there with my family, and my son's game had gotten over, and an older gentleman came up. Now, I know basketball. I know Magic. I know Earl to Pearl, all these different, but there's a lot of players who played in the league and some that I don't know. Mm-hmm. Older gentleman came up to me during my son's game, and usually during my son's game, I just ask people, I'll be like, can I be dad for a second? And this older man, he had a cane. He just said, I wanted to come up to you and say thank you. I used to play in the NBA, and because you guys gave insurance to former players, I can now take care of myself. Mm-hmm. Right?
Who was it?
And so the craziest thing is that Tiny Archibald, I don't know if you know, he found a heart condition with him with what we do. And so it's just paying it forward. I mean, you guys see the contracts that guys have now or whatnot, that's only because of the people who came before us, right? So we're the only professional sports league that has insurance for former players. So that is amazing.
I think we could sit here and talk for hours because there's so many accomplishments, because I want to ask you about basketball too, but we got to go. That's a different time and a different place. But I do want to thank Chris for being here today. And I just want to mention, for 20 years to be a role model for folks, it ain't easy when the cameras are on you each and every day, and you're also competing for one of the toughest jobs on the planet and playing at a high level. So I thank you for that. I thank you for being a role model. I thank you for being the face.
Okay, one last thing I'm going to tell them too, just so y'all know. I went to Wake Forest for 2 years. I took a little bit of hiatus, right, from schoolwork playing in the NBA. But one thing I told my mom before I went to school, I said I was going to graduate, right? So last December, wasn't it?
Yes.
I graduated from Winston-Salem State University. Yeah.
So, HBCU grad.
HBCU grad, but you should have seen Canvas. Y'all know Canvas? You should have seen some of my classmates sending me emails. They was like, "Is this really you?" I was like, "Yeah, this me. And if you want to do this homework, holla at."
Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Paul.
Thank y'all, man, kid. Hey, appreciate it, man.
Come on, always.
Yes, sir.